Dr. Rehab Taha, a.k.a. Dr. Germ, and the Bug Lady, who directed Iraq's biological weapons program. CNN has exclusively obtained the United Nations English translations of her Arabic work papers. Her research was conducted here, at a location well known to UN arms inspectors, Al-Muhammadiyat, 300 miles west of Baghdad. Her notes begin with the test's objective. Her written words are read by a narrator.
A field experiment was conducted to disperse biological agents, botulinum toxin, and spores of Bacillus subtilis, an anthrax simulant, by exploding 122mm Al-Barak rockets. The rockets were filled with the biological agent. A cloud was formed that moved downwind near the ground surface.
The tests were a success.
We have proved the effect of the botulinum toxin and its field use. 80% of the experimental animals perished.
Taha then described the success of their test using an anthrax simulant in artillery rockets.
When exploding the rockets, it was found out that the highest spores rate was in the locations that were near to the explosion, specifically within the first circle of 20 meters diameter. Neither the metal of the rocket container nor the blast temperature had any effect of the spore's vitality.
And she revealed success in a 1989 test using aerial bombs to disperse biological agents.
In a previous study prepared by us, military dispersal means 250-kilogram aerial bombs were used to disperse bacterial toxins and biological agents. It was a successful method.
Dr. Taha's notes do not tell us how far she eventually progressed in her biological weapons testing. That's why the Marines came knocking, looking for her papers and looking for her. Mike Betcher, CNN.
It is a small, unimposing home in a residential district of Baghdad. But here, according to Arabic TV station Al Jazeera, Saddam Hussein went into hiding during the final days of the war. This was one of the last times Saddam Hussein appeared on Iraqi television. Broadcast on the 20th of March, it put an end to rumours that he'd been killed in the first raids on Baghdad. And this is where that address to the nation was apparently filmed. Saddam's office, a cup of tea still on his desk, the presidential stamp inked and ready to use. On the 24th of March, Iraqi TV showed Saddam casually meeting members of his cabinet. It's not known when exactly it was filmed, but the room and all the furniture is still here, almost unchanged. In fact, the house appears to have been recently occupied and abandoned in a hurry. Nothing is packed. A prayer mat and a Quran lies open on the bedroom floor. A military jacket still hung up in the corner. And unlike Saddam Hussein's opulent palaces, there are no gold taps here. This home is relatively modest. Al Jazeera also broadcast documents it found here which it says are military plans to protect Baghdad and the palaces in the event of an attack. It's still not clear when Al Jazeera filmed this house. If the Arabic TV station is correct and these are Saddam's war rooms, then it's clear that despite all the bombing of Baghdad, American intelligence failed to locate and destroy Saddam Hussein's final base.
Of Baghdad are alive with rumours he's in exile or even in hiding in a bunker under the city. Ordinary Iraqis find it hard to believe this iconic figure who held the country and their lives in an iron grip has simply vanished. Andrea Catherwood.
Al-Takriti, a former head of Iraqi intelligence, was caught early this morning by a team of US-led special forces. He's the five of clubs and number 52 in America's 55-man pack of cards of most wanted Iraqi leaders. Defense sources claim he has detailed knowledge of the regime's inner workings.
First time to the school where he teaches, Mehdi Abdul Sahib has a nasty surprise.
They try to destroy everything. These places should be sacred. They shouldn't be looted, destroyed, but as you see.
The looters who've ransacked the city have been here too, wrecking their way through one of Baghdad's finest high schools. American Marines have moved into the grounds, and outside the walls they're exploding an arms cache buried here by Fedayeen fighters. At home, Mr. Sahib and his family count their blessings, relieved at least that the worst is over. Rand Sahib and her cousin Hiba took me to the bedroom where they spent most of the war. Both girls are devoted supporters of Manchester United, and on the bed, beneath David Beckham posters, they huddled together and listened to the bombs falling.
Most of the time I was praying to God to save us from this war.
Was there a loud explosion here? How close did the bombs come?
Yes, one night it was very, very loud, and troops came very close to our area.
During the fighting, and using a camera with a night vision filter, the family filmed these pictures themselves. They were all exhausted and desperate to see an end to the fighting.
Praying to God in order to have a wish, and this wish is to stop this war, this damn war.
In the war, Mr. Sahib was called up for civil defence, but to his relief, the regime collapsed and his weapon was never fired. With the war behind them, life is gradually getting easier. Some stalls and shops are reopening, but prices are soaring. And with power supplies still out, the family say the Americans haven't made a good start. But the issue that worries them most is the thought that Saddam Hussein still hasn't been found.
Where is he?
Where is the DNA? Like Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, you want to see the evidence. And
Yes.
when you know that Saddam
You want to
Hussein
be
is
sure.
dead or
Yes.
he's gone, then you can start breathing easy again.
Yeah,
is that
that's
right?
the truth.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
Like many Iraqis, they're still absorbing the fact that their world has changed and what lies ahead is uncertain. Tim Rogers, ITV News, back.
But that was before the looters and the vandals got to it. Well, today the museum's director agreed to talk to me about what happened and about his museum's lost treasures. Without question, one of the world's most important museums is now under the watchful eye of US tanks. But if ever there was a case of waiting too long to shut that stable door. The main gallery, this before the war, was filled with treasures from the earliest days of civilization, here in what was once known as Mesopotamia. And this is what a mob of looters bent on robbery and vandalism has reduced it to. Artifacts, many 5,000 years old, have been stolen or gratuitously smashed.
This is a tragedy, a big, big tragedy for the heritage of mankind. We have lost some very, very important pieces. There's no price that can be put for these objects because they are unique and they are very, very important in the history and art history of the world.
He believes there were clearly professional thieves amongst the looters who knew what they were after.
Well, this is the bronze statue, the Basitki bronze statue that's lost. It's a huge piece. It's life-size.
Dating when?
Dating to the Akkadian period, about 2400 BC. Another very important piece was lost is the vase from Warka, what we call the sacred vase of Warka, dating to the Sumerian period, 3200 BC.
And once again, unique?
Yes, yes.
Nothing else like it anyway?
Nothing else like it in the whole world.
These are the vaults home to many of the more fragile pieces. The looters got in here too. Much of the damage appears to have been quite gratuitous.
It's not only our museum, you see, it's the museum of the world. It's the heritage of mankind that we have at this very important museum.
A few items have been returned. It seems pressure from religious leaders has pricked a few consciences. For the rest, there's not much optimism.
Not so much a bunker as a bedsit. Saddam's command center in the closing days of the war was this residential house, according to Al Jazeera, the Arab satellite channel. The channel showed several rooms, including one said to be a conference room where the war cabinet met. A meeting shown at the time on Iraqi television could well have taken place here, as could the recording of Saddam's last appeal to the nation. Al Jazeera also showed diagrams it described as war plans, and a presidential seal to approve orders that by then were being widely ignored by his fleeing army. In the bedroom, a prayer mat and a Quran. There was a coat stand on which hung the jacket of a high-ranking officer. The Arab station didn't reveal the location, but this seems to confirm the theory that Saddam sought to dodge America's high-tech onslaught by trying to run the war by telephone from low-tech suburbia. There may have been more than one house. Yesterday we filmed at another, now stripped of furniture and phones, which had created suspicion among neighbours. It appeared to have been the target of a massive US attack that flattened houses nearby. Saddam's low-tech command may also explain why the Americans have systematically flattened the city's telephone exchanges. So where is Saddam? Today we travelled to a former Ba'ath Party stronghold in the north of the city. It was here, in Adamiyah, last Wednesday, that Saddam made his last appearance, sweeping up close to the mosque with an entourage of security men.
Saddam arrived about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It was the second time he'd come here. He stopped nearby with his security. There were many cars. He just waved and greeted people. There was an American aircraft in the sky.
He was with the defense minister, his son Kuzey, and his main bodyguard Abid. He got out of the car and waved at the people around him.
Saddam then went to have a peek at the Americans.
They drove up to the middle of the bridge behind here to take a look at the American tanks on the other side. Then he left.
Saddam only stayed a few minutes. Hours later, the Americans, possibly acting on a tip-off, came storming in.
Well, this is where the trail of Saddam Hussein effectively petered out last Wednesday. He was here, but by the time the Americans arrived, he was well away. That does seem to be the pattern of this war. Reasonably good intelligence, but by the time they acted upon it, however fast, the prey had already fled.
Adhamiyah is dominated by Sunni Muslims, the religion of Iraq's former leaders. This was a base for the Ba'ath Party as an underground organisation before seizing power. But wherever Saddam is now, the noose is tightening around his immediate entourage. Barzan al-Takriti, Saddam's half-brother and a former head of intelligence, was captured today by special forces, acting on a tip-off. And the Americans will be hoping more people will now come forward with information, now that the security situation in Baghdad is beginning to improve. There are some shops and stalls reopening, though plenty still to grumble about.
Day by day, the price is higher. No electric, no water.
Cars are flooding back.
So far, none of the suspicious material discovered by U.S. troops has turned out to be a weapon of mass destruction. Drums of suspect chemicals turned out to be pesticides. Rockets that initially showed traces of nerve gas turned out to be false positives. Pentagon officials admit it looks less and less likely that U.S. troops will simply stumble on a smoking gun.
It is not like a treasure hunt where you just run around looking everywhere hoping you find something. I just don't think that's going to happen. The inspectors didn't find anything, and I doubt that we will. What we will do is find the people who will tell us.
The Pentagon says it planned all along to dispatch a 1,000-person survey group to hunt for the banned weapons. Sources say the team now assembling in Iraq is made up of private contractors and civilian scientists, but is also heavy on U.S. government intelligence analysts who can exploit recently acquired documents and help interrogate captured regime leaders, such as Barzan Ibrahim Hassan al-Takriti, just nabbed in a raid by U.S. troops.
They have one advantage which we did not have. When they speak to people, the people will not be scared to say what they really believe and they know. Whereas when we were there, you had a big secret police that could scare anybody.
The UN's chief weapons inspector argues since his inspectors did not rubber stamp the U.S. report on Iraqi weapons before the war, they would have more credibility now. But the Pentagon counters it will employ careful crime scene procedures to document a chain of custody.
Now that will not stop certain countries and certain types of people from claiming inaccurately that it was planted.
The U.S. remains outwardly confident that finding Iraq's banned arsenal is just a matter of time. But as each day passes without solid evidence, the credibility of the U.S. government is increasingly questioned by its critics around the world.
Simply vanished under the rule of Saddam Hussein. No one knows for sure just how many. We've seen in Baghdad this past week heart-wrenching searches through ministries and prisons, looking for clues, any sign of what became of loved ones. This family tells just one story in hundreds, thousands, but the perseverance of hope here, quite extraordinary. Saeed Rahim is one of the respected Shia elders of the local mosque, a mosque in one of the sprawling slum neighborhoods of Saddam City. Many people disappeared or were arrested here during the tenure of Saddam Hussein. Shia Muslims comprise 60% of Iraq's population, but were suppressed with an iron fist by the ruling Sunni Muslims. It was 1981, they say, when secret police came and took Saeed Rahim's nephews, 16-year-old boys Rahim Ali Mata and his cousin Kadim Hashim, for studying the Shia religion too often, was the charge, and with too much fervour. Days later, Rahim Ali's father went looking for his son and nephew.
He went out in the morning and he never came back. From 1981 till now, years later, we are still looking for them everywhere.
I told my husband to stop looking for the boys in order to protect him, but he left and never came back to us.
Today, faded photos are all they have of the boys and Saeed Ali, who went looking for them. Photos and hope that even after all this time, they will get some good news.
We go to the National Security Headquarters to look, and they chase us away. We're asking the Americans to look for them and return these sons to their families and complete our happiness.
The Americans, however, are still busy skirmishing, so individual cases rarely find an ear.
We are still looking for them in every jail. We hear of underground jails, and we don't know where these jails are. And we don't know until they are dead or alive.
But life goes on as it has since that time in 1981, the big change being that now, for the first time, Saeed Rahim can openly make the call to prayer and conduct religious services the Shia way. Under Saddam Hussein, the Shia version of the Muslim faith was forced underground. Their dream remains in their hearts that their family will be reunited through some miracle.
If they came back to the door after 25 years, I would die from happiness. My God, bring happiness to anyone who would bring us happiness. I'm asking for God's blessing.
But they have a nightmare too, that with no proof of Saddam Hussein's death, just maybe one day he will come back. Michael Holmes, CNN, Baghdad.
These are the pictures that shocked and angered historians and archaeologists around the world. A curator of the Baghdad Museum discovering that one of the most treasured collections of antiquities had been plundered under the very noses of U.S. troops. The curator and a TV crew even caught some of the looters red-handed, but on their own, they were unable to stop them. The Baghdad Museum, located just a few hundred yards from Iraq's information ministry, contained a priceless collection of ancient sculptures, tablets, and artifacts that chronicle thousands of years of history, dating back to ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. Just 5 days after the looting took place, 30 experts from around the world gathered for an emergency one-day session at UNESCO, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, to demand steps be taken to salvage the situation, including an immediate worldwide ban on trade of Iraqi cultural items and an urgent fact-finding mission to determine what has been lost. Some were furious with the United States for not protecting antiquities in Iraq and not preventing the arson and pillage of Baghdad's National Library, which held one of the oldest copies of the Quran. An archaeologist from the University of Chicago said that from January onward, he repeatedly warned U.S. State Department and Pentagon authorities that such looting was a real possibility and had urged them to take measures to safeguard the archaeological treasures.
I was dreading it. I wasn't expecting, I was dreading it. And when I saw it, you know, of course, the first thing is just total I don't know, you're totally devastated. And then I got very, very angry about the whole thing. It should not have happened. It need not have happened.
Coalition military officers insisted they were surprised by the looting.
U.S. officials said their priorities were to win the war and minimize the loss of life. But critics here point out their priorities also apparently included protecting hundreds of oil wells scattered across Iraq and the oil ministry building in Baghdad ahead of protecting the Baghdad Museum and other cultural sites.
And several of the experts say now that with the U.S. in charge in Iraq, it has full responsibility for the safekeeping of Iraq's cultural treasures. Any further damage, said one, would be totally inexcusable. Jim Bitterman, CNN, Paris.
Helping to deflect criticism, the U.S. military did not do enough to protect Iraq's antiquities. FBI Director Robert Mueller says his agents are making an all-out effort to recover stolen art treasures.
These steps include sending FBI agents to Iraq to assist with criminal investigations, issuing Interpol alerts to all member nations regarding the potential sale of stolen Iraqi art and artifacts on both the open and the black markets, and then assisting with the recovery of any such stolen items.
There are also 25 FBI agents on the ground in Iraq, going through documents obtained from locations such as the Ansar al-Islam terrorist camp, looking for leads about future threats to the United States. Agents are also interrogating Iraqi prisoners. The FBI also called attention to the role it played before the war in helping gather intelligence. Agents interviewed 10,000 Iraqis and Iraqi Americans living in the United States.
As a result of these interviews, approximately 250 reports were provided to the United States military to assist in locating weapons production and storage facilities, underground bunkers, fiber optic networks, and Iraqi detention and interrogation facilities.
Mueller says the interviews went well, resulting in only 2 official complaints from the Iraqi community. But some Arab American groups say some Iraqis felt profiled.
But ethnic profiling, religious profiling never served our country, and I'm afraid that it will hinder the efforts of the government to build relations with a community like the Muslim community.
That relationship is very important because of the unique help Muslim and Arab Americans give the FBI in its fight against terror.
On that front, officials say al-Qaeda remains a potent threat, but they're also increasingly concerned about the Lebanon-based group Hezbollah. Kelly Arena, CNN, Washington.
Spring heat of Baghdad, a boy dives into a city swimming pool. The war might never have happened. Except that within a couple of hundred meters, American troops guard a site containing trucks full of Iraqi missiles. The missiles had been hidden by the Iraqi army in half-built houses nearby. At the other end of the street, a strange form of spring cleaning is taking place. Residents are moving tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition of all types out of their houses. They were dumped there by Iraqi forces as they retreated to Baghdad. Riyad Jaoud spent $15,000, all his savings, building a new house. Now he hurries to clear the unwanted explosive gift out. I've spent 4 days already taking out ammunition, he says. I'm a civilian, not a military man. This is a stain on us. The Americans say, clear it all out and we'll take it away and blow it up. The worry is that it will blow up first. At least one house here has been destroyed that way.